Hi everybody, this is Jason, and right now I'm going to talk about stand-up comedy. Now, most of you may know a few famous stand-up comedians out there like Kevin Hart or Dane Cook or others, there's a lot of them. But right now what I want to do is try and break down the art behind stand-up comedy. And to do that, I'm going to use my favorite stand-up comedian, Dave Chappelle. Now, the question that I'm concerned with is what makes a good stand-up comedy routine? What are the different elements that go into making a great stand-up comedy routine? So the first element I want to bring up is material. Well, the truth is, if you know anything about comedy, we all know that it's the material that makes a comedian funny, because basically the material is what they are presenting. The comedian is presenting to the audience. With no material, there can be no stand-up comedy routine. With that being said, let's break down the two aspects of material in a stand-up comedy routine. The first aspect is storytelling, and the second aspect is observations made by the stand-up comedian. Now, the thing about storytelling is, it's exactly that. It's storytelling, and as we know, if we've ever heard stories, we know they're not always true, and that's the same deal with stand-up comedy, storytelling in stand-up comedy. Usually, whenever a comedian uses storytelling in their routine, 99% of the time, it isn't true at all. It may be exaggerated a bit, it might have started from a true story, but in the end, it's not really true. It's often exaggerated to an extreme, only to get the best outcome or response from their audience. So to help you guys have a better picture of storytelling in a stand-up comedy routine, I'm going to use an example from Dave Chappelle. Alright, so here's Dave using a bit of storytelling.
Crackheads are like that. I had a crackhead break my car window one time. Broke it! You know what he stole? Fucking candy bar I had lying on the seat. That's all he took. It's a goddamn candy bar. I was so mad, I drove around the neighborhood for 5 hours looking for a crackhead with chocolate on his face. I did that. I finally found when I grabbed that motherfucker and said, "Hey man, what's all this chocolate on your face, motherfucker?" He looked confused. "Chocolate? This is doo-doo, baby." I said, "Ah! Oh, man."
Alright, so that's classic Dave, but clearly we can tell that this story probably isn't very true at all. I mean, the absurdity in his story is clearly, he says it in a way where it might seem like it's true, but it just seems too absurd to actually have happened in real life, and more than likely, it hasn't. So now let's look at the second aspect of material in stand-up comedy, which would be observations made by the stand-up comedian. Now, these observations made by the stand-up comedian usually are observations of things that happen all around us. Maybe they're current events, or they're things that we go through day to day, but we just don't really pay much attention to. So the comedian basically expresses their way of thinking when encountering or hearing about these things that happen. Let's take a look at Dave using observations in his stand-up comedy.
I remember right around September 11th, Ja Rule was on MTV. That's what they said. We got Ja Rule on the phone. Let's see what Ja's thoughts are on this tragedy. Who gives a fuck what Ja Rule thinks at a time like this? Nigga, this is ridiculous. I don't want to dance. I'm scared to death. I want some answers that Ja Rule might not have right now. You think when bad shit happens to me, I'll be in the crib like, "Oh my God, this is terrible. Could somebody please find Ja Rule, get hold of this motherfucker so I can make sense of all this? Where is Ja? I need Ja Rule."
So we can see here that Dave is making an observation on an interview around the time of 9/11. So what he's saying is, in this interview with Ja Rule, Dave doesn't think it's really necessary at all to have, or helpful in that matter, to have Ja talk about what his perspectives are on 9/11, seeing that he has no experience with any sort of disasters like this. Another thing to point out is that Dave is so experienced that he's able to talk about a topic that's really sensitive. 9/11, it's a very sensitive topic among Americans, and yet he's still able to bring out some humor, which a lot of new comedians can't do, but all comedians want to be able to do. Another important element in making a good stand-up comedy routine is finding your persona as a stand-up comedian. Basically, the persona of a comedian is the personality or the character of that comedian, whether it be sarcastic, goofy, or angry. Of course, there are lots of different personas when it comes to stand-up comedians. The reason why the persona of a stand-up comedian is so important is because the persona is basically what influences the material of that stand-up comedian. Now, Dave's persona seems to be a little goofy, per se. So a lot of his stand-up comedy, it's really limitless because he can be pretty much goofy about any topic, as we saw earlier. Another element in making a great stand-up comedy routine is, as a comedian, realizing what kind of audience and what kind of setting you're going to be presenting to. It's important to be wise about your choice of material depending on what type of audience and what setting you're going to be performing at. For example, you probably wouldn't present the same material that you would at the White House as you would at a nightclub. That's just crazy. Another important element in stand-up comedy is culture. As we all know, culture does seem to influence every aspect of our lives, and the same is for stand-up comedy. It's true that cultural norms, tendencies, and peculiarities do influence stand-up comedy material. Interestingly enough, it's not so much the culture of the general audience that influences the material of the comedian, because oftentimes the cultures tend to be really mixed and there's lots of cultures represented, but more so it's the culture of the stand-up comedian, him or herself, that influences the material that they say. Here's an example of how Dave incorporates culture into his stand-up comedy.
That's right. People only see the surface. They see the division in our foods. Just because I eat chicken and watermelon, they think that that's something wrong with me. Let me tell you something. If you don't like chicken or watermelon, something is wrong with you, motherfucker. There's something wrong with you. Where are all these people that don't like chicken and watermelon? I'm sick of hearing about how bad it is. It's great. I'm waiting for chicken to approach me to do a commercial, nigga. I'll do it for free, chicken. It's the least I can do.
So we can see here that Dave is using some of the stereotypes that are applied to his culture, his people, my people, that is used to make his stand-up comedy a little funnier. Now, the last element that we're going to talk about here that makes a stand-up comedy routine good is confidence. Basically, this principle can pretty much be applied to almost about anything that we attempt to do. Fact is, as a comedian, if you don't have confidence in your ability to make people laugh or confidence in your material, your stand-up comedy routine is not going to be funny at all. Even if your persona as a stand-up comedian is shy or timid, it's important to at least have that confidence in your material and the memorization of your material while you're presenting to the audience. The best comedians can memorize their material so well that even though it's rehearsed, they can make the audience think that it's absolutely spontaneous, and that is the goal for every comedian. And the truth is, as a comedian, if you have confidence, you're so much more likely to better utilize your time so that you don't end up with having too little time left or a lot of time left. So it's important to have that confidence to help you use your time better. Anyway, guys, that's all the tips I have for right now, and I'm sure there's lots of other different aspects and elements that go into stand-up comedy, but like I said, there's no one set way to make a stand-up comedy routine. basically the best advice I can give to all of you aspiring comedians out there like myself is the best way to improve on your delivery of stand-up comedy is to just keep practicing. It's just like any other skill. You practice and you'll get better, and eventually you might even become great if you keep at it. I mean, who knows? You might even become the next Dave Chappelle. I don't know if that's even possible. Alright, so thanks guys. Thanks for watching the video. Who knows, I might even make another one. But until next time, I guess I'll just see you guys later.